And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Paranormal Guys. I, of course, am Sport Cat. I am here with you as one of your hosts. We have a great show lined up tonight. I want to thank real quick. I want to thank Guyz Radio at guyzradio.com for allowing us on. And of course, we're also live on Rainbow Radio, so thank you for that. And yes, Soul, we were just a few minutes late. We were having some technical difficulties, but that's okay. Let's bring out my co-host here, Miss Amanda. How are you, Amanda?
Good. How's it going tonight?
It's going great. I can figure out all my buttons. And we've got a guest co-host. We're just gonna keep this guy regularly around
Yes.
here. We have Mr. Greg Ogles, the film extraordinaire, filmmaker, director extraordinaire. So it's going to take me to Hollywood when he gets rich and famous.
Live long and prosper.
All right. We've got a great guest lined up tonight. Aiden has written a book about Cades Cove, the Smoky Mountains. And, well, he's written several books. Let me just have him come out and tell us a little bit about himself. Aiden, how are you, sir?
Doing good. Doing good. Thank you for having me tonight.
Hey, we're excited to have you. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Sorry about all the technical stuff. That was me, everybody. That wasn't
it. Happens. It happens. We all do it. So don't sweat it. There was one night I started the show and everything went out.
Yes, we had to finish the show.
So Amanda and Cheyenne had to do it for me. So yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, happens.
It's all good. Every now and then gremlins get in the system. So you've written some books. You've written 40 books actually, I think.
Yeah, that's over 40.
Yeah.
And Cades Cove, actually, it's not new. It's been around for, I guess, I first published it through Kindle back in 2010. It's been changed a few times since then. But it's gotten a new life, mainly because fans of the book. It's actually given it a life in Eastern Tennessee, especially out in the Gatlinburg area. There's a store, I don't know if you're familiar with Moon Pie out in Pigeon Forge, but they sell a lot of them. And this is stuff that was done without my knowledge of even knowing what was going on. The book, because I had a heck of a time I live in Nashville in that area. I had a heck of a time getting anybody to take anything that I had. Even though I've had some success as a Kindle author, it was a lot different trying to get stores to take you seriously. But I know there's like 3 in that area now that actually carry the entire series. So, and Moon Pie does really well. They've sold quite a few for me, and it started mainly people asking for it, and they had to deal with Amazon at first. I know it's more Ingram now, but. Nobody really likes to deal with Amazon and on the paperback end because they don't accept returns and that kind of thing. So it's a little difficult. But they took a chance, and I think they probably have sold about 5,000 copies from that store in the last 5 years. So from the series, yeah. So it's revived. I was a full-time author at one point for about 6 years. That ended in 2017. Which I think I told you guys before the show that I work as an adjuster during the day, so I had to go back into the workforce. And but it has kept things going, at least where it's still a business on the side and all. And I just love the excitement of it. I love people that really love the books, and I get to meet them because I'm starting to do yearly signings out in that area. So that the last 2 years have been out there.
Okay. Awesome. So did you have a history of Cades Cove before you wrote this book?
My wife and I used to go there a lot. I mean, and actually a couple strange experiences we had many years ago. This is before I started working on the book. I actually started writing that story back in 2005. And it was done with, I actually was going to have it through another publisher. This is before the whole ebook craze happened. And then we held off on it. My agent at the time, who was actually a best-selling author on paranormal, his name's Jim Rain, and we came really close to some stuff. It just never really panned out. And then when the Kindle thing happened, then we went that route instead, and I had some success with it. My biggest series that I've ever had, as far as success with, is a different one. It's the Juice Chronicles, but in the last few years, that's more waned on that. The Cades Cove thing is stronger now than it's ever been as far as on the paperback level. So it's been
It's such a popular area. We go there all the time. I love Cades Cove. It's beautiful.
It is. And of course, this is a creepy story, but and a lot of it's based on, most of it's fictional, of course, but real areas. And some of the events that are paranormal are actual real events, but from other areas of life. My wife, I helped her many years ago. She used to be a paranormal investigator, kind of like TAPS. And so we were doing it about the same time they were, before they ever got big. And she was a representative for the American Ghost Society for Tennessee. And a lot of the stuff that's the creepy, scary things are things that actually really happened in some of them. There's a fingernail ping on a vase, that kind of thing that happens in the story. It's actually happened in real life with us. So yeah.
That makes me want to go to Cades Cove even more and do more exploring.
Yeah, I've had people do that actually. Even though the ravine that's in the story is fictional, we've had people that have written me later and said they've had their entire book club take a trip to see if they could go find it. So
Nice.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
I mean, it does go down to the water back there, but a small ravine.
Yeah. But it's fun. It is fun, and we still go out there now. Like I said, we try to go at least once a year in that area. So
yeah.
And but some of your creepy stories, have any of them been from Cades Cove?
Yes, a couple of them have. I mean, the very first thing we ever had that was really creepy was we were just taking a tour by ourselves in the spring one year, and we just got off the beaten path and found a cabin that nobody really goes to much. It's more popular now, but at the time it wasn't. But I remember we had gone there, and it was divided by a pretty big door, and the door was open, and there was no wind. It was cool, a little creepy that day, but as soon as we left, it slammed shut. So that was pretty creepy. But we've had so many experiences in our lifetime that would be like, we'd do something that, well, it didn't much into that. But what inspired the actual book, the chalet that's in the story, we actually stayed at one that was like it, just a little bit bigger. And it had those gliding rockers that are real silent. I remember sitting in it thinking, oh, this is crazy. Somebody could sit here and nobody even know you're there, that could watch you while you sleep. And yeah. And then my wife the next morning, she's always had a clairvoyant. She's been able to see things. She just runs in her family. Her grandmother had her really strong, and she was from Scotland. So, but she saw this man that was standing in her bedroom. He's looking out the window, and he was dressed in hunting gear. Had the hat and the flannel shirt, but she could see that from the shoulder on down. You couldn't see anything. It was just a knob. And so it was that was kind of the genesis of the inspiration for writing that story, because I started working on it about 6 months later. But it did it more with a woman instead of a man, and a situation where it really ties into it's really a kind of a complex story, where a couple from Denver come out to that area and go ahead and stay in. They go to a ravine that was told to him by his boss in Denver, that had grown up there. He was one of the last people that left the cove when it was taken over by the state, by the U.S. parks. And so it's unknown place. And then while they're there, there's a spirit there that thinks she recognizes them. So she latches onto them and follows them home. And she's bummed. She's about to go. And the story winds not too much away, but basically the person that she was brutally killed, and the man that did it was his ancestor, and he's a dead ringer for him. So and he did that, so because they went and changed their name. That ancestor was kind of a crook, so their name was similar but not the same, and so there wasn't really much history. But he finds out a lot about that when he comes back to Cades Cove. He took a bag with him, a little bitty bag that had a lot of trinkets in it, and it was left by the picnic blanket where he and his wife they had dinner and then they kind of fool around a little bit, and then the next thing I know, that wake up after being asleep. She's mad at him for that happening, of course, and then they find that bag next to the blanket, and she tells him to give it back to the Park Service. He refuses to do it. For some reason, he just doesn't do it. He just puts it in his pocket, and because he just feels inclined to do that. But taking it back to Denver proved to be the catalyst for everything getting worse. And then when he comes back, there's a park ranger who's Native American, and he understands a lot of this stuff. And so, of course, there's this history of people giving stuff back to the park that they take away. Because of the ancient folks that have been there so long. So there's a lot of energy that way. So I don't want, I'm kind of rambling a little bit here, but it all adds up into a very, pretty tight story. I mean, he's racing against time to try to save his family. And he's this very angry spirit that thinks that, and she's right, he's related. And her whole thing is that if I kill you all, then I'll finally kill the seeds, the way she puts it,
Right.
the end of it. Because he doesn't think they're
Wow.
true. So, yeah, even though he's a good guy, it's just that it doesn't matter because he's related.
Oh, I have to read it now.
A lot of people really love it. They said it's creepy. Some people, it's not, say, well, it's not so scary as it is. You read it and you start to have a nightlight on because you start to listen for every noise, because she's really creepy the way that she can sneak up on you. Footsteps, nobody there, voices, taunting you, that kind of thing, So it's fun.
Gives me cold chills thinking about it, Aiden.
Well, thank you.
Yes, that's amazing. I can't wait to read it.
Well, thank you. I guess it would be a compliment, because if you got a scary story and everybody's laughing about it, then I think you nailed. I once got a 1-star review because a lady said she couldn't finish, so she felt she wasted her money because it was too scary. And somebody commented and said, "Isn't that the point?"
Right. Yes, the scarier the better.
That's the purpose. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like buying a romance novel and not having any romance in it. So.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Or buying a comic and have nothing funny in it.
Right. Yeah. You buy a book like that on purpose we have a closet behind me here with over 1,000 horror movies in it. So I'm all about the creepy,
You're just creepy.
Yeah. We love it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the horror genre. So
I almost thought she said that she had 1,000 people ready to come out of her closet. So
yeah, they're in there.
She's got them tucked away. And here this whole time we thought it was Andy.
Right? Yeah. They're around.
Around. So Aiden, but your specialty, is it all horror, or what is some of the other books you've written?
More supernatural. It just happened to me. That's why I read most of the books that are not horror. I'd say probably maybe 8 of them are horror, or the 40-something. There's things in some of the other ones, like the Judas Chronicles is about Iscariot trying to come back so he can find his way back to heaven. And that's got a lot of international. It takes place all over the world. It's very high action. There's his arch enemy is a former KGB guy that in quite by accident in the first book becomes immortal because they're both trying to find this tree of life thing, and it's a crystal and not an actual tree, and it's in Iran. So that leads to a very powerful series throughout the rest, because he's been immortal. He goes by the name Immortal. So he's changed his name many times through his long lifetime. But this lifetime matters more to him because he fell in love with someone for the first time. His son, he fell in love with him too, but it left him like he left everybody else, because they'd get old and he wouldn't. He hung around enough, and then so it's having a little bit of fun with his son is in his 60s, as a first-time professor. He dad who's like 30 years old. So they reverse roles. One is calling the other dad, and the other's calling son, that kind of thing. Together privately. But from me, Tree of Life, controlled by the Russians underneath it, it's in a cavern. Some of the shards end up in the chest of this guy that's really evil. And because it does, it lends his heart. He's now immortal. He cannot be killed because life lives with him. This is just man as wicked as you could ever imagine. But at the same time, some of those shards, his son takes with him, and it starts to make him and his mom, who's on deathbed, start to get younger. And so now, this guy that's been fairly, maybe a twisted sort of morality throughout his entire existence, there's now something to fight and live for because he's got his family. But he's still missing the point that he's this whole thing for him to fix. And he's been immortal all these years to figure out how to fix it. So it's a 7-book series. It's really good. It's more about redemption, but it has a lot of high action. There's violence. It can be pretty gruesome at times because this guy's arch enemy is Victor Kozlo, and some others are like that. They're just about as evil as you can get. So,
that sounds good.
That actually was my success. It probably still is as far as how many books I've actually sold. I think I mentioned I was able to do it for a living for a while.
Yeah.
And, but as far as love, I don't say what happened. Tennessee, it changes everything. So
yeah, your signal's breaking up a little bit, Aiden. I don't know if.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, I don't know if you're connected to the Wi-Fi or not, but your signal's breaking up a little bit.
Okay.
Russell Little, he is a local author here in Atlanta. He says he's cheering you on, so that's great.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, Russell's a great. Russell. We had him on a few weeks ago. He's written some really cool books. So.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
We have so many amazing people on here.
Are they all colored?
You mean what's the colored?
What was all of?
You mean comic books?
Yeah.
Yeah,
kidding.
I'd be open
I'm
to
the
it.
clown.
I think every author would be actually.
I was talking about the Alabama Library.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. They all have to be red, wouldn't they? Wouldn't it be red versus the orange for Tennessee, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't get them going in Alabama. So
I know it.
It's all good.
I'll be throwing crayons and used diapers and things.
Oh, wow.
Oh, typical Alabama fan there. So, Aiden, you say you've done a lot of research. Well, I guess you said your wife did. So you went along with her and did this research?
I did. Most of the time it was, I had real mixed feelings about the paranormal, being a little more afraid of it, that kind of thing. And so, but she was always really bold. And so we used to explore some really pretty bad hauntings at sometimes. And so we've had a lot of experiences. I mean, it'd probably take hours to talk about them all, stuff that's happened. And some stuff's happened just because of her being the way she is. I think a lot of that gets attracted to you. And so we've lived in several places, been haunted. We did own an antebellum plantation home in Paris, Tennessee for a while. And that was haunted. But it was, the place had this amazing warm feel even when it was. It's just really different. But that was that's the only place I've ever seen a full-fledged apparition in my entire life. And the thing about it, he was as real as you guys. And, and when he walked past my office, because I had an office there, and I thought, who's this guy in the house? But I didn't feel creepy. I didn't feel anything. He just looked like he owned the place. Walked right by, and maybe a little disappointed he didn't have a top hat on or something, from the 1800s. He looked like he's from the 1970s. And I thought, right after that, my wife comes in right behind him, and our little dog, who's bark at anything at that point, he's hopping around her legs. And I think, what's going on here? He should be going nuts because there's this guy in this house. And so I got up and went to look, told her what's going on, asked her, are you playing a joke on me? She said, what kind of joke? I said, there's some guy in here. And no, couldn't find him. And what's odd is that there was a kid that had died in that house back in the 70s. And he was 17, and he had died at Paris Landing in that big lake they have over there, Kentucky Lake. He had a ski accident and drowned. And I saw a high school picture of this kid like 2 months later, and it was him. He had the lamb chops and the beard, so he looked like he was 21, just like what I thought, But yeah, that was very odd. But we've seen a lot of different spirits as far as different forms of them. I mean, there's been shadow type stuff we've dealt with before. I've seen mist before. And then I don't really hear anything, although at that house I did once. And where Fiona can actually hear them sometimes. So yeah, so it's a lot of that stuff. So I have that stuff. It's an arsenal that I can pull from, is to write from. You can stretch things a little bit when you're writing a book anyway. It's fictional. So, but there's a lot of inspiration there.
Nice.
Have you guys ever had any experiences with orbs?
That was the question
Yes.
I was going to ask.
Yes.
I could feel that coming.
Yeah. In fact, I will tell you this story. The best book I've ever been a part of, I wrote with her. We almost had a deal with Amazon's Thomas and Mercer, and they just didn't feel the action was propulsory enough. But it's about Civil War. It's about a woman that actually dresses up as a man to go find her husband. So he joins the Confederate Army of the South. The Army of Tennessee is what it was. And when I was doing research on it, I'll give you this story. I mean, I'll tell you that we used to do investigations at the Carnton, which was it's right in the middle of the Battle of Franklin, which was the bloodiest battle of the Civil War per hour, as far as what, the carnage that happened there. And a lot of times you get scope, a lot of people get spirits, orbs, all that kind of good stuff. And I can remember going there, and we take pictures. We come home to our brand new house, actually, that was in Spring Hill. And we were given 2 lots that were on a floodplain that they said they can't build on. So we had a really big backyard. And we'd take pictures around the house, and we get them developed. And sometimes in Franklin, nothing. I mean, nothing. I mean, just blank pictures. But invariably, the ones that we took at home were filled with orbs. And that always made me curious, because we did have some spiritual stuff happen there. We had a little girl that stayed us once, and she ended up peeing in my kid's toy box. And when Fiona asked her why she did it, she said, well, the man in the bathroom scared me. And so I thought, well, what's going on here? And then when I did the research for the Battle of Spring Hill, which is was right before the Battle of Franklin, so just a small battle, but I think they had like 300 or 400 casualties, and that it was right the day before Franklin happened, or the day or two before. And when I did research on it, I thought, I found this creek that said it's called McCutcheon Creek, and I thought, what is that? I don't remember that, because we had a grassy creek that ran right by our house, and there's cattle gates still there, all kinds of stuff. And when I pulled up a map of what it looked like now, McCutcheon Creek was attached to my backyard, and the battle happened in our backyard.
Wow.
Bedford Forest and Stewart were on one side, and Long was on the other. We're talking that close, and so people died, and then they move on, and so that if they don't get buried, the nature and everything else just puts them there. So there's no telling what's in that backyard, and I didn't know about it because we moved many years later, So yeah, but we had all kinds of orbs like that. I mean, just filled with them. And I don't know if you're talking more about the orbs that are like the solid orbs and that kind of thing. And and
Yeah,
sometimes it can be moisture. Fiona always takes a very critical look at that kind of thing, so she won't really believe in it unless it's really provable. But we used to see some real solid ones. And the only other thing I've seen, like I've seen an actual orb, like in daylight, it's like a turquoise thing, and that was at her aunt's place out in just north of it was in Goodlettsville, and it flew up over a tree. And my wife's talking to her aunt. I'm thinking, nobody sees this. I'm seeing this crazy thing going on here, and nobody's ever going to believe me. And then when I looked at her aunt, she said, I saw it too, Tim. So, yeah. So but the orbs, the orbs are kind of real common, of seeing things like that, as far as any spiritual stuff. But but sometimes they can be just moisture and that kind of thing. So you have to be real careful about what it is. So
Yeah, the ones I was really referring to, they're luminous balls of light, and
yes,
you can see them with your naked eye. If
yeah,
if you can't see them with your with your naked eye, if you have to have a camera with a flash, I'd just say dust.
and that
But
makes sense. And that makes sense.
um,
And that was the one I saw mentioned up in Goodlettsville. It was one of those because this thing was glowing,
mhm.
and it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it just rose up above. It was in fall, and it rose up above the tree and went on the other side. I thought it was the strangest thing I'd ever seen. And then I've heard of the ones that bounce across across people's yards or something and just disappear, or in haunted areas you see them go across fields. And but that's just, yeah, I have seen one of those. And it was, like I said, it was turquoise. It wasn't, usually you hear about them being red or orange and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's just really different. And if
Yeah.
Miranda had seen it, I probably wouldn't be telling you about it now because I would have thought maybe it was in my
Yeah, in a film I've got coming out in January, we were lucky enough to come across some orbs and
cool.
get them on film. And actually, they're in color too, so people can actually see the color of the orbs that we were seeing that night.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, they stayed there the whole time we were there. So I mean, they came out and they were just kind of almost all the time there was one, or all the time there was at least one. But,
Yeah.
Other times 2 and 3 would join. And
Wow.
then, one would disappear, and then there'd be just 2, and they would just be almost like they were playing.
Yeah.
And my companion that was with us, he's like, "Oh my God, they're dancing." He had never seen orbs before, so he was just completely fascinated. But it was a cool event, and looking forward to have to sharing that with everybody.
Oh yeah.
I'll bet you'll get an enormous response from that. Seriously, because I've never seen anyone really capture that stuff unless by accident, or that they're hoping to catch it, but to have them actually perform for you is that's wild.
It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. Yeah, we were at the right place at the right time. So,
and you didn't stop filming at all, right, Greg?
Well, we filmed for quite a while until we were so flipping cold we had to leave.
Yeah.
So, it was cold. It was like 22 degrees, 23 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
And we had just left another area where the day before we had this massive encounter with Bigfoot.
Oh wow.
More than one. And we were amped up, ready to go back to almost do battle again, like with the Bigfoots. And it was really calm there. So we moved over to another location, and then boom, see these orbs. And we were so jacked up with adrenaline, we couldn't stay out there in that 20-something degree weather. I mean, it was freaking freezing.
Yeah, I couldn't have done that either.
but we stayed out there for quite a while, and we got a good bit of footage of them.
Nice.
That's cool. That's cool. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be looking forward to that when you release that.
Coming soon.
Yeah, right this month, right?
Yeah, next month. It'll come out. Actually, we just finished up editing the film yesterday, and we still have to go through and just find the tidbits that you have to tweak here and there, but otherwise it's done. And it'll be released at AMC Theater in Coleman, Alabama on January 4th as a premiere, but it'll also you'll also be able to see it online. So cool. It's called the Land Between the Lakes.
Well, how cool is that?
Mm-hmm. It's going to be
1
spectacular.
month from today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was it actually at the Land Between the Lakes, or
we were. A lot of the footage was caught at the Land Between the Lakes, and it's where their orbs were too.
Yeah, that's not far from Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, over there.
Yeah, and the orbs experience, they were phenomenal, and also the Bigfoot experiences was phenomenal. I actually got to see one with my eyes there, And we went in there 5 minutes, and we were still getting our film gear ready, and we started hearing these growls, right? Just kind of growl. Kind of ignored it at first, and then did it again. And I was like, "Hey guys, you hear that?" And then it did it again. My buddy just freaks out. He's just like, "Blah, we got to get out of here. They're here." I'm like, "Dude, this is why we're here. Calm down."
Yeah.
So, but it makes for good film. I promise.
Oh, yeah, I
you.
bet
It
it
makes for
does.
good film. I mean, we were cognizant enough to finally reach and get some cameras, the whichever ones, the ones that we could reach. We got a hold of them, and this encounter is just incredible. We try to group together and try to push it back into the woods because it's sitting there growling and intimidating, trying to intimidate us. And we're like, no, we're not having it. And so we try to take a step forward. And then every time we take a step forward, it just growls back. Just, we're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So it's like a tug of war type thing, just take a step forward and it goes back. And eventually we do push it back into the woods, and their eyes starts glowing, right? And their eyes start glowing red. And we get that on film too. And it's an incredible sequence, absolutely phenomenal sequence. But we were going back to try and get another one of those, and it was quiet that night, but we got the warts.
Oh wow!
And you got cold.
And we got cold, real cold. When you. Yeah, I mean, when you get such an incredible experience like that going on, and you just have to leave because you're so freaking cold, it's almost disappointing.
Yeah, but you hung in probably longer than you normally would because of that adrenaline too, probably.
Oh yeah, right. But speaking of your books, there, how long did it take you to write a book? I mean, when you're writing a book, how long does it normally take you to write one?
It depends. When I was full time, I could write one in 3 months. But when some of them took longer. Like the Civil War one I mentioned, I had to learn a lot of history and everything, so it took a year writing with. It's actually Fiona's idea, and she just sat on it for like so long, for like 20 years. I thought, we got to get this thing done. And so, but I didn't know much about the Civil War, so I had to become educated about it. So that took a year. And when I'm working, like now, when I write books, it does take about a year. It takes maybe a few months to research, and then a year. When I first started, it took forever. I mean, my first book, I think it took from the time that it was, because I cut my teeth on it. And so it probably took 5 or 6 years, because I wrote a longhand twice, and this thing was 170,000 words. Not that they were all good words, but because they eventually got down to like 120. So, but to force yourself through that twice I would never do that now. I couldn't. And then it went to a word processor, and then from there to computer. And each time I just felt, I don't know if this is going to work, because you're used to doing it one way, and trying to learn how to do it a different way. You just feel like, I don't know if this is going to work at all. I don't know if it's going to be inspired. I don't know if it's going to sound like garbage or read like garbage, and it just took a long time. But yeah, so it's a range. There's some people I know. I do know some folks that can actually write a book in a week or two, and I don't know how they do it.
Oh, wow.
I can't. Yeah, I can't be like that. 'Cause I'm very much a vision type person. So I'll get visions of it, and it's like most of it's imaginary. But I've had people come back to me later and say, the thing that you thought was not real, we found. So that kind of thing, but not always. I mean, a lot of it's so it's really but I have to be in that mode, because if I can't picture it in my head, I can't write it. Where this other gentleman, I know that he gets an idea, he can just roll. He can just roll and knock out 25,000 words in a weekend. And that's just crazy. I could never do that. I think the most I've ever written a day is like about 5,000, and which is a lot, but it's but then I have to go back and look at.
I don't even know 5,000 words.
I when I quit college years ago, I was doing music at the time, and I thought, I don't need a degree for this. But I was going to do psychology, and I was intimidated by doing theses and and a dissertation and that kind of thing. And I thought, I can't write that many words, and yet I think I have at present there's over 2 million words in print that I have at the moment, and I've had probably up to 4 or 5 at some points. So I guess you just never know. You should never sell yourself short, anybody out there. You just never know what you can do.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'll catch up in the chat here real quick. Soul, when you were talking about your antebellum house, ask about what time, what year that was.
Yeah, that would have been the year that it happened was 2015. And it's interesting because they always tell you that stuff can happen when you're doing some type of rehabilitation. And outside, we had a bay window that was outside the dining room, and it had a top that was rotting. So I had some other guys that were working on that day. And my first inclination was thinking, oh, maybe it's one of them. But then I realized that, well, they got beards and they're bigger than this kid, that walked by. So it wasn't them. And a couple of them knew pretty well anyway, or one of them did. And so it's possible that, it was definitely 2015. And we were there from 2013, about May 2013 to April 2017. Because when everything died with my business, we had to move and let it go. It just was massive change of, life change that hit. But, it happens to a lot of people. So you just pick up the pieces and you rebuild,
And RJ says that he or she, I'm not sure, has seen plenty of orbs in St. Augustine.
Yes.
Yeah. I love St. Augustine.
It is. It's beautiful. And that's definitely a hot spot. Is it near the fort over there? That's what I'd be curious. Or is it,
I'm sorry.
And the lighthouse.
Soul wants to know what about the war book? What year was that written?
The war one was written in 2000. We wrote it together. We started in 2016. We finished in 2017. And then Grace Doyle from Amazon almost took it. She even gave it to Blue Lake, which is another of their publishers that does romantic, or not romantic, but historical fiction, because she was really taken by the love story between the lady trying to find her husband, who was part of the cavalry. And they both are looking for each other, and they both think that each other are dead. So it's really a great story. But because of the Civil War was just such a hotbed at that point, they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And so that was when it was. So it was 2018. We self-published it, and it's just one of those things. It's definitely the best work I've ever done by far. There's nothing supernatural about it at all, but it's really a good book. So, but
what was the name of that book?
What's that?
What was the name of that one?
It's called They Fought Like Men. Okay.
And then RJ also said that they've seen orbs that have letters in them. And some have seen faces. I've seen faces.
The faces thing I've heard before too. I have.
Yeah.
And actually you get that in the pictures of the little orbs. I mean, the ones that are nothing like you got those colored ones. It's great. And the ones you could see. But you'll see that a lot of, if you get really good pictures of orbs, the real solid ones, invariably some of them will have faces or look like they have faces. So that's not unusual on that. Did you see anything like that when you did those, the ones that you got out there in Land Between the Lakes?
No, all of ours were translucent.
Okay.
If as they get far enough away, they don't look translucent. They actually look solid.
Right, right.
But actually had one to buzz me and another guy named Johnny, and it came within 2.5 feet of us, and it really startled him. It just it kind of buzzed us, kind of like a bat or something would,
Wow.
But I got a really, really good look at it, and it was kind of an amberish looking color. It was a mixture between some kind of red and yellow, whatever, but it was definitely translucent. You could see through it.
Wow.
Did you try to touch it?
Did I try to catch it? No.
Touch it?
No. I wouldn't try to catch it or touch it. No. I don't know what that is. I don't know where that thing's been.
I'd be like,
I don't know where that thing's been. No.
I wouldn't want to
I'm that person that's like, oh, look, a van. Do you have candy?
I mean, for all I know, it's a portal to another world. I'll stick my hand down in it.
There you go.
And bring it back in my hands and, Uranus or something.
Right. Instead of the Yeah, exactly. And instead of the land between the legs, it's the land before time.
That's,
You know?
If I thought I didn't have to go to my everyday job anymore by going through this orb, I would be running for it.
Oh yeah, yeah. As long
Yeah,
as long as it took you someplace better.
yeah, true,
If you
true.
wake up and you find that you're working on the Egyptian pyramids, 4,000 years ago, then it's
Oh
maybe
gosh.
But I tell you what
Oh.
was interesting though, this was at the same spot, but a couple of days earlier, we were there and looking at orbs, and I actually saw a portal. I
Really?
got a very, very good look at a portal, and it freaked me out because at first all I saw was just a glow, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I've never seen a glow like that before. Kind of looks like the sun.
Yeah.
But it was just a glow. I couldn't see the source of it. And I kind of moved and there was a couple other people there that they were seeing it, and I was going to move myself to where I could see the source of it. Finally did. And it was a rectangle, and it had right angles on it. It was like, I'm like, huh. And it is very two-dimensional, very, very two-dimensional. And I looked into it, and it was like looking into somewhere that was daylight.
Wow. Okay.
Wherever it was daylight on that side of the portal. And I was going to take a couple of steps forward, but kind of toward it, but it just zapped out. And I think somebody hit it with a flashlight or something. Whatever it is, it just collapsed, just boop, it just was gone. But a few minutes later, an orb came up from the place where that portal was.
Then maybe it's traveling through that. It's pretty.
It could have been. It very well could have been. But I tell you what, though, and I'm still having to deal with this paradigm shift in it, because I looked into another world.
Wow.
I don't know where it was, but it was daylight wherever it was.
Yeah.
And it was night where we were, and cold.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
that's wild.
Yeah. That's another thing that happened while I was up there. So that's
kind of a wild area. Makes you wonder.
It is.
On one of my, I did write a series when I was out there in Paris. It's basically a witch series where these witches move into the house we had. Mm-hmm. They're on the run from another group, and they're semi-immortal, so they live to 500 or 600 years. And one of them's this 18-year-old kid that's 130 years old, and he's bored out of his mind in Chicago. Now he's going to be stuck in rural Tennessee, and he's not happy. And he's sarcastic. And it's a great. It's probably the funniest thing I've ever written. That series. It's called The Clash of Covens. But the second book, it's funny because when you're mentioning that portal, the designer Michelle Lee, she's very talented. We were working on it together. I give her ideas, and she would do the art. Of course, I'm not going to draw anything. But I told her I wanted to see something like that because they were being drawn to another. So you got this break in the clouds, and then you see this other world that's on the other side. And once again, it's bright where the other's dark. So you made me think of that when you said that. So that's pretty cool. I love that. By any chance, did you get that on? Did you get it?
I did not.
I was thinking.
I wasn't even recording that day. I wasn't even recording. Yeah.
Sometimes I can tell you one other thing about you'd asked about the war book about from Spring Hill, and that when I told you all that battle stuff and the orbs and stuff. There used to be, it's all developed now out there in Spring Hill. I've not been there in a long time, but they tell me it's just huge now. But there was a field that was not far from where we lived, and we'd have to take back roads to get to our house because it was, like I said, it was new development, that kind of thing. And one time we were going through this road, and the weirdest thing, it was smoke coming down this creek, the same creek I was telling you about, McCutcheon Creek. It was flowing down as a train, like almost like a stream of them. And it was weird looking smoke. It jumped up, and it went over our car and continued on the other. And we looked in the rearview mirror, it was still doing it. And no camera, nothing. So I thought, oh my Lord, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And there's absolutely no proof.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but you made me think of that too, because it's like, okay, you don't have a camera, and you just got to tell people about it. Hope they believe you.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Hey, Aiden, have you ever seen a Bigfoot, or have you experienced?
I have not. That's why I'm fascinated. I'm very fascinated to see this because I'll be honest, I've always been a little skeptical. The guy I write with, J.R. Rain out in Washington, he's a wholehearted believer in Bigfoot, big time. And so we'll talk about it now and then. But this is you got me going now, because I did have a friend years ago that in Georgia, he had an encounter. He told me with one, and his was he was camping out in the woods out there in Georgia. And he said you could see moonlight, but he said he got this horrible smell. And when he turned around, he couldn't see the moon anymore because something was standing there. And it was like probably about 10 feet tall compared to him. It's huge. Mm-hmm. And he was a tall guy. And then it disappeared, ran off. Mm-hmm. But he thought it was Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. And,
well, so I'll tell you another story about North Georgia. A few weeks ago, I got to see one in North Georgia.
That's where it was, in that area.
Yes, in North Georgia. I got to see this year. I've got to see two in Georgia. Wow. Well, one with my eyes and another one on FLIR. And I'll tell you, I'm working on film number 3 now, and we were in North Georgia with Scott Granger. He's got this company where, it takes people out on expeditions. In the daytime, he teaches you how to fly fish in these small streams.
Wow.
And when you're done fly fishing, it takes you out squatching. So,
wow.
Yeah. So you go out on a squatching expedition, right? So anyway, we're going out to one of these little places. And I'm putting this guy in our film because it's such an interesting business, and it's so fun. So we're going out on an expedition, and I've got a new camera guy with me, right? And he's kind of sitting in the back. Normally, I would be recording every bit of this, not necessarily for what happens, like, if something jumps out in front of the truck or anything, but just for the conversation between me and the driver or whatever. So new guy, he didn't know anything, he just just riding with us, and got his camera in his hand, but not recording. And while, the driver and I are talking, I happen to look up, and this Bigfoot crawls out in front of us.
Oh, wow.
And, and it's on all fours. And at first I think it's the biggest freaking black bear I've ever seen,
right?
That's ever lived, right? Because that's absolutely huge. I'm like, holy crap, what the F is that? And then it starts to crawl up the hill on the other side. When I say up the hill, why it's crawling on all fours makes sense now, because when we did stop to try and get it on camera, but the thing was gone. But on both sides of the road, the angle coming up to the road and going away from the road was very, very steep, like 70 degrees or so. So it would make sense to be standing upright. It makes sense, more sense to crawl.
Yeah.
So it was doing that, and we stopped right where it went up the embankment on the other side. But when it went up on that other embankment, it looked really, really weird. I mean, it just had these real funky looking maneuvers that it was doing. I'm like, that's crazy looking.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. I don't even want to go because it's crazy looking, like it's a demon or something.
You gotta touch it.
Yeah, no. No, you don't touch it. It's greasy or something.
They're never gonna take me out squatching. I'm gonna be like, I gotta touch it. I gotta pet it.
No, you'll be bait.
Yeah, she'll be the bait. You stand over there. Anyway, so we stop. We'll go to try to film this thing, right? And get out the cameras, the thermals, and I'm looking all around. It's gone. So we're like, okay, if it's a bear, it's going to leave claw marks as it going up that embankment, right?
Right.
Well, we found the marks going up the hill, but there weren't claw marks.
Wow.
Hand marks going up the hill, hand prints, and it left footprints. But the clearest one that we got and we could measure was 17.5 inches long, and about 7.5 inches wide.
Yeah, it's big.
So he was a big boy, big boy. And the other one, it was in Midwest Central Georgia, and we did get that on thermal. So we got thermal image of it. So,
well, that's wild.
yeah.
Because this friend of mine back at the time, his name's Kevin. He was very serious about it, but matter of fact,
Mhm.
And he was one of those guys that you tell you if you believed it, great. If you didn't, okay, let's move on. He
Right.
knew what
Right.
saying, that kind of thing,
Mhm. Well, that's one of the indicators where you can tell whether somebody is lying or not.
Right.
It's like, hey, I know what I saw.
Right, and then just moves on.
Leaving me alone.
Yeah, it's because how about like Louisiana? They got Rougalou or whatever it is.
Rougarou.
Rougarou, yeah. Believe it or not, because I forgot all about this stuff. I was in a band later in life. I did music many years ago, but it didn't go anywhere. But when I got married, I quit, and then I moved on to doing stories and stuff. Not long after that, but when this guy's this friend of mine that I was still doing music at that time, and then I stopped. But we did a song I did with a different group years later called Swamp Boogeyman, but it's based on Rougarou.
Mhm.
So it's, if you ever want to hear it, I think they still have it's from the Dead Hollywood Stuntmen.
Mhm.
So it's I think it's still on YouTube someplace because he still has it out there. But
Well,
It's
that's
heavy.
what they used to call the Bigfoot here in the South is boogie,
Really?
the boogers. They called them boogers. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't
Oh,
know that.
exactly. That's where the term boogeyman come from.
I had no
Boogers.
idea. I had no
Yeah,
idea.
that's the name of my first film. Is The Legend of the Downy Booger.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's that thing I'd tell you about. Like sometimes I'm just writing and working because he gave me these. He put Swamp Boogie for the thing, and I thought I'm gonna get it because I wrote the words after he'd already written the music. I thought, let me see what I can think this about, and that's what I came up with. So it's really weird that it would be that way. So yeah, it's cool.
Absolutely.
Aiden, are you working on a book right now?
I'm about to. Actually, I've got one that I'm going to be doing from the Judas. There's the spin-off series where he goes back in time and he's under a different name, Emmanuel Ortiz. That's who he was before he became William Barrow. He was named, according to our legends, of course, he was named William Barrow by Teddy Roosevelt or by a guy he was with. They gave him the name along with Teddy Roosevelt because he was going to be part of the BOI, which is like a precursor to the FBI and CIA. When he first came back over to the United States. But this other one, Emmanuel Ortiz, we're going back in time. And so he's less and less evolved. If we go back far enough, he'll be the very person that betrayed Jesus, and you'll be able to tell it without a doubt. Because he's evolved some, but then he really evolves quite a bit in the 20th to the 21st century, that kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and then I will work on at least one more Cade Scope book. There's 4 in there now. The last one we did was about Spearfinger, and that was kind of a weird experience too, just because I had to try to figure out how can I make the 2 legends about her fit, because there were 2 different ones. One is you can hear her run down the mountain and it's thunder. And I thought, how are you going to sneak up on anybody like that? There's no way, because she's supposed to be able to sneak up on little kids and somehow slip her Spearfinger in and rip out their liver and adios. And how does that happen if you can do that? But then I saw her in my head because I was meditating on it, and I thought, it was kind of eerie because I looked up from this room that I'm in right now, and then the doorway, and I see her and I'm thinking in my head, and I thought, she's not stone, she's more leather than anything, but she's like, you couldn't cut her if you wanted to, that kind of thing. And she could be loud if she wants, she doesn't have to be. And she kind of smiled at me and then disappeared. And I thought, this is all in my head, of course. But it freaked me out enough to where I was like not sleeping well. I was like looking over my shoulder and all kinds of weird stuff. And I thought, cut it out, Jim. It's just in your head. But I went ahead and got my graphic artist to make a picture. And the only thing I could get her was black and whites of the Native Americans, the Cherokee. I found a pretty girl from there from like the 1800s and sent it to her and said, something like this. But, she's going to have cracks. Like she's got, cement or something over her skin, that kind of thing. A little bit, make it like that. And, with the Spearfinger and all. But what she ended up drawing, or what she was an illustrator, was exactly what I saw. That was just so weird. Because I ended up telling Fiona that too. It was like, I was thinking, oh my gosh. So, yeah.
I have a Spearfinger story, but I'll have to save that. Aiden, I got to cut you loose. I've got another guest. Where can people get your stuff? And I'm going to get to the chat in a minute with the questions, but where can everybody get your stuff?
Okay. The best place would be the best on Amazon under Aiden James. You would see all of this. I've got an Amazon book page. I also have a website. I don't update it as much as I should. It's AidenJamesNovelist.com. And those would be the best. If they're looking for something, if you're in the Gatlinburg area, both Moon Pie has it. Up in Dandridge, they have a place called The Unkind Raven has it, and then the second chapter has it in Gatlinburg.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aiden, we'll get together an email because I've got some stories to share with you, and
Okay.
you and Greg can swap some stories too. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. And when you get the other, come back and tell us about them, please.
Okay, absolutely. All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this honor. So thank you.
Oh, yes, sir. Aiden, thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks for coming on, Aiden.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I can't wait to read this.
That sounds really interesting.
Yes.
It does. He's got a vivid imagination, and he manifests some things that sound like. Real quick, let me answer some things here in the chat. Yes, I did just get out of work. Detailed it, didn't get home in time to change clothes. So turn around, you can see my number. And we will tell you before the night's over where you can catch Greg and all of his stuff. So just hang tight for that. In the meantime, we have a great guest coming up. She was with us last week. We loved her so much, we wanted to bring her back. Alethea is back with us, and thank you for being patient. We got a little bit of a late start, so I know it's late where you are. So thank you for coming back. First off,
I'm happy to be here.
Well, you remember Amanda. This is Greg. He's my guest co-host. He's the Bigfoot expert. So
yeah. Well, I tuned in about 15 minutes ago just to kind of make sure I was here, and I was hearing you tell the story, Greg, about the portals and orbs, and I have a really cool portal story I can share at some point if you want. As I was like, that might be something he'd be interested in hearing, as well as some of your other guests there.
I love some Orby stories.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know if you want to ease me on and introduce me to the other folks first, or have me dive right in, or what would you like there, sir?
Well, no, I think most of our fans last week, you gave us a great introduction about who you are and everything you do. And I think I could have you for several hours. So
there you go. Love it. Yeah. So I was actually at the Monroe Institute. And this is a place that is known to have orb sightings over the years. And I actually have some old pictures that I took with a regular old digital camera, and you could kind of see them with your eye sometimes, and sometimes you can actually see them on the film. Yes, I see dead people. Yes, I do. I am a medium. So that place is well known for having orbs and for being a portal for all kinds of different benevolent interdimensional beings. So the last time that I was there was in July, and I was there for a remote viewing 2 seminar with Joseph McMonigal. And so about half of the class had been to his RV1 class 2 months earlier and had all decided as a group they were going to come back for the second level. And one of the guys that was in that group lives up in Toronto, couldn't come last minute, but he drove down midweek to lead it's a CE5, Close Encounter 5 circle. He does a lot of work in the Arizona and New Mexico deserts, and they play recordings of sacred instruments like Tibetan bells and bowls and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And it usually triggers something to happen. Mm-hmm. So I just happened to be in the parking lot when he comes tooling in on his motorcycle after his 10-hour drive down from Canada to lead this. And I'm like, who are you? And what's going on? He tells me, I'm like, well, I wasn't part of that original group, but can I join in on this little circle thing? Because it just seemed like too cool to miss. So he said, sure. So I sat there, and at Monroe, they have these Gigundo crystals that are amazing. and they also have a fire pit. And so we're all sitting with the crystal way in the distance, the fire pit in front of us. And so he tells everybody, I think there's about maybe a dozen of us that were there. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and we're sitting there, and he tells everybody to listen to the music, close your eyes and just, see where it takes you. Well, I don't typically close my eyes when I'm doing my metaphysical work, because I trained to myself over the years to be looking in people's auras and getting information, or looking across the veil and getting information. So I'm always having my eyes open to do my work. So I'm like, well, all right, I'm not going to close my eyes. I'm going to keep my eyes open, but getting to that dispersed gaze and just kind of see what I'm perceiving on different levels of spirit. So as I'm sitting there, I see off to the side, so maybe about 10 feet away from where our circle was, I saw what looked like a spotlight on the grass. Now it's 10 o'clock at night, and we're in the middle of Virginia in the mountains. It's dark, right? So the light looked like it should have come from a spotlight, for as bright as it was on the ground, but there was no light source, and you didn't see a beam. It's just all of a sudden I saw this giant circle illuminated in the grass, and I'm like, that's really different. I'm trying to just like stay cool, and wondering, what's that? So I ask in my head, what's that? And I hear the telepathic communications I usually have with spirit, but it was with a benevolent interdimensional being instead of with spirit in this case. And it said, oh, that's the portal, how we come through. And I was like, okay, so why can't I see you? And this being then says to me, because you don't need to see me, because you've trained yourself to hear our voice and the voice of spirit through your clairaudience and the work you've done, you can understand and channel information from us without us having to appear in front of you. Because if you were to see us in our natural form, your body would go into shock, or would at least have an adrenaline reaction of some sort, which would be counterproductive to the messages we want to bring and the work we want to do. So I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And I was having this conversation with them. So I'm like, all right, no problem. I don't need to see you. So then the way that these beings communicate was very similar to how animals communicate, with that telepathic, they kind of project a picture into your mind, or the information whole form into your mind, so you kind of get it all at once. And so this being projects to me the picture of the scene, one of the final scenes from The Fifth Element, which is an old movie with Bruce Willis, and I forget the woman star's name, but the woman turns out to be the fifth element. And what happens in this particular scene is they activate the air, the earth, the water, the fire, the four other elements. They all send beams to her, and then a beam comes out of her heart and goes up, and it destroys these oncoming bad aliens that were coming to destroy the earth. And that's kind of like the key moment of the movie. And so they show me that clip in my head, and they say, what do you think that beam was? And I said, well, in the movie, they say it's a weapon to protect the earth. And he said, no. It said, and I got it was a he. I know it's not, but it felt more masculine, the beam.
Yeah.
So he says, no, it's not a weapon. It's the power of pure love. Because when we send pure love anywhere, no evil can stand against it. No malevolent force can stand against it. It's repelled or destroyed by the power of love. And then he says to me, which kind of freaked me out a little bit, he said, we've been watching you, and we know your spiritual practice. And in my case, what I've been doing for a while is I bring energy in, I bring it into my heart, I breathe it, and then I send it out to first all the people I know, then all the people I don't know, then all the animals and living things on the planet, and then the planet itself. So I kind of like do it in different waves and layers. He said, we humbly request that you also do as that beam was and go up to create kind of like the waves around the earth. If you think of the magnetic poles, imagine the energy coming and creating a protective barrier around the earth, and continue straight up into the universe and send love. He says, part of what we're doing is we are recruiting ambassadors to create this kind of love energy throughout the universe, because we're going to be coming within the next 2 years in a much more physical form. And we need as many people as possible to be those translators, ambassadors, intermediaries to help calm the masses when they come and help to be our voice, because we don't communicate and talk like you talk. We communicate in a very different way. So we're looking for volunteers, so to speak, to learn how and to work with us and whatnot. And so I was like, okay, I can do that. I can send that love up, I can share it and ask other people to do that too, because, I have a big mouth and I get on platforms sometimes like this, and I'm like, sure, why not? Because anybody can do it. You don't have to be special. You just have to feel that desire, feel love building in your heart, and send it out to the universe, send it out around the earth, send it out to every living being and every sentient being that there is. And so that was my portal story. But when I was done, that little interaction, the man who was leading it, and he came up to me and he said, oh, so you're an ambassador now. Now, this is not an out loud conversation, but he actually said that. I was like, dang, okay. there must be something to this, so it was really very cool, to actually have the visuals as well as the auditory, and have all this other information exchange with this benevolent interdimensional being. And what I started using that phrase, the benevolent interdimensional being, because I don't want to pigeonhole and say it was an angel, it was an alien, it was a guide, it was a dead relative in spirit. It's like, no, they're coming from a different dimension than we're at. They're coming into this 3D world in the ways that they can. Oh, and they basically said that the way that they open up these portals is they fold time and space and they just step through. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, how do you do that? Of course, I don't have the answer to that part yet, but I thought it was kind of a neat concept. So they actually can travel back through time as well as through space. And they just basically fold it, create the portal, step through. So I was like, all right, that's kind of neat.
Interesting.
So that was my portal story.
Wow.
Interesting. Actually, it sounded a whole lot like mine, because there wasn't a beam or anything else that was associated with what I saw. It was just it,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounded a whole lot like mine.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And the whole point is they're trying to make it seem like less intimidating. This is, they're here for benevolent purposes. And part of the problem is so much of the propaganda or the movies that have come out, they portray them as these bad guys. And when I've had other exchanges with them, they basically say, we've been coming for millennia, ever since, or beyond, ever since there was sentient life on our planet. They've been here to oversee, to help, to be the teachers. They're like, look at the cave drawings that are in almost every culture on every corner of the planet. And they all have very similar depictions and legends and mythologies, which were their actual histories of these beings that came from the stars to be their teachers, to be their gods, to be their mentors, to bring them math, to bring them astrology, to bring them healing and medicine, to bring them different kinds of engineering and plumbing and you name it, right? So they've been coming and here, forever. And so they're like, oh, we've always been here doing good and trying to preserve and help and advance. But they only come at certain points. It's kind of reminds me a little bit of the old Star Trek, the prime directive, right? They can't interfere with the progressions on the planet, but every once in a while, it's like, wait a minute here, you're going to blow yourselves up. We better come in. Let's shut that nuclear reactor down for a little bit, or let's do something like that. They're fun. I've ever since I was in New York, I was in the Hudson Valley. I lived there and I commuted back and forth in the middle 80s when it was a hotbed of all kinds of UFO activity. And I remember seeing the triangle shaped craft with the lights around it flying above 684 with all of us cars pulling off to the side. And it was well before cell phones, and all standing like, you seeing that? Yeah, I'm seeing that too. Yeah, we did that. hear any sound? No, I don't hear any sound. How the hell, what is that? He said, and then it's being in the newspapers and all. So that was cool. And then a couple years later, I was living a little further north at a place called Putnam Lake. And it's a little man-made lake about 4 miles around and the mountains all around it. And my boyfriend was from Boston area at that time, and he was over. And we're sitting there on the couch and we're looking out at the sliding glass window on the porch, and we could see the mountain and the lake. And we see this green orb, this giant orb looking thing floating high above the lake. And then we watch as it goes right into the water. And I was like, did you just see that? Yeah, like that, whatever that thing is, it's in the water there.
It was like swimming, right?
Mm-hmm. But just got underneath. But I also heard that a lot of the bases and a lot of the hiding places for the ships are underwater.
Right.
And I was like, all right.
It would make sense for all the hidey-hoes to be up under the water.
Yes. And then I had one other fairly direct contact with a being. I had taken a girlfriend of mine. We took the Reconnective Healing with Dr. Eric Pearl, and we took Matrix Energetics with Dr. Richard Bartlett. And we said, okay, let's practice some of this stuff together. And I had a healing room up in my house at that lake, and it overlooked the water. So we were swapping off. I worked on her first, and then she was working on me. So I'm laying on the massage table. Now the doors are closed, the windows are closed, and all of a sudden the temperature of the room drops about 15 degrees. And I'm like, okay, it's like breezy, and I don't have air conditioning. It was an old lake house. And I'm like, okay, that's different. And Nima, she's at my head. So I feel her hands at my head. Then all of a sudden I feel another set of hands. I feel the base of the palm on my hip, but the fingers were touching at my belly button. I'm like, that's a long ass hand. And it also only had 3 fingers. And I was like, I'm feeling the pressure of this on me. And I just feel like warmth and contentment and whatnot. It was just like, and I like peek my eyes open again. I don't see anything, but I'm feeling it. And I'm like, okay, this is just too weird. And so I asked Roseanne, I'm like, are you aware of anything going on in the room? And she said, yeah, the temperature just dropped. And I said, are you aware of any being in the room? And she's like, I sense something. I said, in my mind's eye, it's really tall. It's really blue. And it's really benevolent. It's trying to help heal some old wound or something that I have somewhere down in here. And they're like, they're helping. They came to help. It came to help. But so it was really kind of weird, but it was like, it was palpable. I could feel it. The room, the temperature change was the freakiest part though, because it had to be at least a 15-degree temperature drop. But yeah, it was just, and the sense I had was just peace and blessing, and I'm here to help, and so I was like, whatever, I'm like, whenever I open up and do healing circles, I always ask for any benevolent being that wants to come help, as long as your vibration is higher or greater than mine, come on down or come join in on the party. And I don't care whether it's an angel, grandma in spirit, a guide, an alien, whatever, right? Well, somebody actually came that time to help besides my friend who was working on me. So they've kind of been around me for a while. So I'm sort of like, okay. But that last one there at the Monroe Institute, that was really interesting, because we intentionally were calling for them. They came, we communicated, I got homework, they left. Right. There you go. Who knew? But the Monroe Institute, it's an amazing place. If you haven't been there, you got to get there. It's a consciousness institute. It's been around for about 60 years now. They use technology and different research techniques to help assist in expanding consciousness and accomplishing different types of objectives, from being better at remote viewing to doing advanced kinds of healing to doing out-of-body work, lucid dreaming. Well, you name it. You go on their website. There's all kinds of stuff that they can do. But it's in a beautiful location. To me, it's like Avalon on Earth. In fact, I wrote this book, The Muse of Monroe, Portal to Potential. And it's 90% of it is channeled writings that came through while I was at the Monroe Institute and on that property, and like just feeling the portals opening and information just pouring through. And I'd love to just share like one little thing that came through, because it just has a nice vibration to it, just to, in case you're wondering, like, should I go? Well, see how this vibration feels to y'all, and that'll let you know if you want to do a little more research. This is called remembrance. You stand in the center of your own universe. You are the love in the heart of your creation. Give voice to the song in your soul, longing for expression. You are the messenger, unfolding the message, a truth ever known, yet joyfully forgotten, to delight you with discovery as you travel on. You are blessed and holy, despite any appearance of the profane, refinding your purity and power, your innocence and your purpose, and your peace is a gift of revelation. The earth is your home, and you are her home, for she would have no being without the song of creation you collectively sing.
Nice.
So that was one of the first ones that came through almost 20 years ago.
That reminds
half of the
me
book
of,
are those kind of inspired writings, and then the second half of the book are questions and thoughts to ponder that help us to tune into what is our purpose, what do we need to do to have more joy in our life, what do we need to do to help each other and help all people evolve and ascend and make the choices to whatever the next step in our evolution is going to be. And so it's also on Amazon. I think your last guest was on Amazon. And all the proceeds of this book go to the Monroe Institute, to their scholarship fund, because I wanted to do something as a gift to kind of pay it forward and share all the energy and the wisdoms that came through. Because I take credit for being the good transcriber. I can't take credit for, like, I didn't create that. You know, I assembled it. It came through, and I was writing the dictation as fast as I could perceive it and get it down on paper. So Spirit's the true author of it. I'm just the person that helped to channel it through and consolidate it into a form that was more readable. And one fun thing, I don't know if you've gotten the same kind of information, Greg, but the reason I was told it was important to read channeled work or to perceive channeled information, so whether it's a painting that was created by a visionary artist, or a song that was channeled by a musician, or a book that was channeled by somebody like myself writing what was coming through, is that anything that's channeled has both the energy and information stream. And when you're observing that painting or listening to that music or reading those words or hearing them, if they're being read to you or spoken, you can back channel up that particular vibration to the source and get then whatever you specifically need. So you might not need that inspired writing, or maybe you don't want to paint or write music. Maybe you want to come up with the next invention or the next best project for your business, or the solution to your relationship issue with your kids or your loved one, or how to heal a certain situation in your life or in your body, right? So you can follow up that thread back to the source and then get what you need to channel through it. So whenever we partake of channeled information, it gives us an opportunity to go get what we need, like that salmon going swimming upstream. It's like, oh, let me get back to the riverhead. Oh yeah, there it is. And then you can get what you want. So that was
fabulous.
That.
Fabulous. It sounds like you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah,
I have. I've been in this field for over 45 years or so, give or take. So yeah.
Wow, you've been in it longer, 5 times longer than Amanda's been alive.
That's all right. You know, I love the young people that are out there today that are doing this, because I'm like, God, you know, you have so many tools at your fingertips that, like, I wasn't killed to get it back then, but you know, we didn't have the internet back then. You didn't have, you wanted to take a course, you got to travel to where that teacher was, you know, it was, everything was done in person, or maybe by a book or a tape cassette series that you pop in. You know, now, I mean, my goodness, you can have the podcast, you can have Zoom workshops, you can have, you know, just watch videos on YouTube and learn all kinds of wonderful stuff and go play and practice, you know, as well as I still like the in-person stuff.
Yeah, but I was going to say, but I tell you what, you know, your drum in the background behind you really reminds me of some of the gatherings that I've been to, and there's nothing like an in-person gathering where, you know, you have drums, you know.
Oh yeah, I love to do like retreats and put together workshops and speak at events and just be there with people, because so much of all this it's all energy. It's energy and information, right? Two sides of the same coin, right?
You're right.
So I love being there, because we get good energy coming across the cameras and all and the airwaves, but there's something when you're in person, you know, you could feel it that much more. I mean, if we all you know, put our hands together here and sent energy, we could do energy pancake, all four of us. We could be feeling it. We could start to circulate it. Anybody who's out there that was watching, you know, put your hands here, and you could, I tell you right now, you hold your hands up, you're going to feel energy. You will feel it. I feel it being sent. You're going to feel that pulsing. You're going to feel that sense of love. But boy, when you're right next to each other and you're in each other's aura and your fields are overlapping, literally overlapping, it's that much more intense and amplified and
Speaking
fun.
of auras, are you able to see auras in people?
Yep.
I saw an aura for the first time a couple of weeks ago. Well, not for the first time, for the first time in person. I was able to, and without physical contact with a person.
How did you perceive it?
Well, it was the guy was becoming animated. We were telling a story, or he was telling a story in an animated way, and I was looking at him with a complete black background because it was dark and he had a fire in front of him. And as he would move, you could see the aura just kind of move with him, you know. And it was at first I thought I was seeing things. I'm like, and
did it look like heat waves coming off of him, or did you actually perceive some color as well?
It was red. It was red. Yeah, it was red, and I was like, that is so weird, you know. and finally it dawned on me that, you know, it was his aura, and as he calmed down, it seemed like it shrunk down some, you know.
Right.
But it was the weirdest, most enthralling thing. I was like, dude, I just saw your aura. He was like, oh, I better go in and put some clothes on.
So I will teach you all how to see an aura, because I love doing that for folks.
Oh, really?
And so anybody who's listening, you know, to do it more consciously. Yeah. So what you want to do first and foremost is you kind of bring in some energy, breathe in extra energy to yourself and bring it into your heart. And then you want to send love to connect your heart to the heart of the person that you want to read. Okay. So you're coming from this place of no judgment. It's just love. Then what you want to do is you want to make yourself as neutral as possible, so you're not confusing what's my energy and their energy. So you kind of do a kind of calibrate yourself to say, okay, I'm going to keep myself pretty blank. And then what you do is you use your peripheral vision. You're not looking directly with the rods and cones like you would if you're trying to read something. You actually let your gaze get a little bit fuzzy and you look. So if I was reading Amanda's aura, I would look pretty much to one of the paintings that are up above her right shoulder. I'd be looking up that way and letting my gaze kind of get a little dispersed. And I would start to see, first you'll kind of see the outline of just what would look like an energy field. So for some people, they'll perceive it first like waves of energy, like heat rising off of a road on a hot day, right? They'll be like, it won't necessarily have color, but it'll have this beginning of, I see the shape of the energy field around. Remember, our aura has levels to it, right? So we have our physical body. Then the first layer is the etheric body. That's where the life force basically runs through and animates us. The next level out is our emotional body, right? And that is where obviously the emotions come. So the red in a lot of cases is going to be, you are probably seeing the person's emotional body, that layer. Think of it in layers of rings of the tree or layers of an onion. So red is a really strong emotional one. So when he was animated, his red would be flaring. When he was more calmed down, it would kind of shrink back down and wouldn't be as pronounced. The next layer is our intellectual layer, and then the one after that is our spiritual layer. So when you're there, you also want to see like how far out from the body are you perceiving things, and are you literally seeing with your peripheral vision, or are you seeing, you're connecting with your intention to, I'm connecting to her physical body. What's going on? I'm connecting to her etheric. What do I need to know about her life force energy? I'm connecting to the emotional body. What's happening on their emotions? Again, on their thoughts. And then on the spiritual level, that's where you can connect with guides and loved ones in spirit, because they hover around at the perimeter of the spiritual layer of our aura. And anything that manifests physically has worked its way in from the source of, through the spiritual, through the thoughts, through the emotions, through our energy into the physical. Now it's manifesting. And so if you work on the spiritual level of things, you can either manifest things more quickly or you can get rid of things. There's actually a whole discipline called SRT, spiritual response therapy, which was created by Robert Dexler. And he has this whole menu-based system where you use pendulums to figure out where's your block, what do you need to clear, what programs are running in that spiritual layer. And so if you kind of turn off the hose at the source, then the fire jet, the jet of that water stops. And it's like pulling out a splinter that you've had forever. It stops the acute pain. And within a very short period of time, the old chronic pain gets healed and goes away too. So yeah, the layers of the aura are really cool. And the thing is, don't judge it when you're viewing it, right? You have to stay neutral and be in that love space, because the minute you start to have any kind of judgment, you can perceive it, but just don't judge it. Don't put a spin on it and make it bad or good or anything else. It's just, It's just red, right?
Right.
Because the minute you start to judge it, the person will feel judging and they'll shut down. And then, you want them to feel the love and have their aura fluffed up, because it helps you to see what you need to see. The other way to train is, especially sunrise and sunset, look at a place when you can see the horizon and look at the trees. And you'll be able to start to see the energy that's above the forest and above the trees. And it'll start again like that wavy energy that you would see from over the pavement. But in this case, it'll also then start to have some different colors. And sometimes you'll also see rings around the moon. So if somebody, when it's a full moon in particular, you can kind of look at that, let your gaze diffuse, and the rings around the moon will start to take on, you'll see the aura of the moon. And sometimes it's a blue, sometimes it's a beautiful green, sometimes it's more of a pinky red or purple, depending on what's going on. So there's things in nature that you can use to kind of just train that, let your gaze be diffused, and then just kind of send your intention to what can I perceive? What do I observe? And it's okay if you're not perceiving it with your literal eyes, because, I can tell you right now, see a giraffe with a pink tutu around its neck. Did you all get that? You saw it, right? Mm-hmm. You saw it somewhere, right? Yeah. You didn't see it with your eyes, but you saw it. So sometimes when you're connected to someone's aura, you're going to see in that way. You'll have an image appear to you, the same place where that giraffe with the pink tutu around its neck showed up. Mm-hmm. You'll see information or colors that way versus I'm literally seeing a red glow. Right. You just perceive it with that psychic sense of and
perception. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
Before, I was able to like take somebody's hand or something like that and close my eyes and see it. Mm-hmm. See the aura. I would see it that way. But this was the first time I had ever seen it with my eyes. And, it was a really cool experience,
Yeah. So. And I remember I was in Sedona maybe about 20 years ago, and aura cameras were all the rage. And so you could go into one of their metaphysical shops and you could have them take your picture and it would show you your aura, actually on the picture. It would come up over and then they would tell you well, if there's a lot of blue in your aura, you are a natural born leader. If there's purple, you're a mystic. If there's yellow or golden colors, you're a teacher. And if there's green, you're a healer. And, so there was different categories and all. I still have the old picture, and it was like so fun just to see it and also see like what's possible, just all the different overlays and like all these little clouds of colors that are around you. And I said to them, of course, my old science background came up. I said, all right, well, if this is real, if you take 2 pictures, they should be identical, if I haven't changed any in the last like 2 minutes. So I paid to actually sit there and do one set. Okay, I'm still me. Take another one. Because I wanted to see, because otherwise it's like, yeah, what kind of random, mumbo jumbo stuff are you doing here, right? Because it was all new. But sure enough, they both were pretty darn close. And they were extremely different than my friends that also were with me at that time. And when they sat down and had it, radically different between all 3 of us. So I was like, okay, it was fun. But I love aura stuff. Aura stuff is cool because you can find out so much about what's going on. Like even one of the I think I shared this the last time. I did psychic fairs for about 10 years as psychic boot camp. So I could learn to really fine tune all the different skills that I was going to need out in the field. And I remember this one time I was tuning into the lady's aura, and I could see in the etheric body, that's where family programming is held. So it's in like that genetic pattern. And I could see, I'm like, wow, you don't have an issue yet, but there's a genetic component of lung issues with the women in your family. Because I could see it was not in the physical part yet. So I hadn't manifested, but I could see it was in the etheric, which meant it was in her energy field. So it had come through. And so when we can actually perceive where the weak link is in somebody's energy field, it's going to be, where's the weak link in the aura? Where is the energy not as strong? Or where is it flaring up at a color that maybe it shouldn't be in that place? And that can help them to be paying attention. Like, oh, yeah, there's lung issues here. So clearly don't smoke, try to keep, breathing in good air quality and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, there's so much you can tell from the aura. I mean, it's a fun thing, but it's a great diagnostic tool for helping somebody figure out, like, why am I not accomplishing what I want to in life? Or why is this kind of messing me about? And then you could go, and see what's happening. Excuse me.
Oh, gosh.
That's pretty cool. And you can do that even like through electronics, like through this. Don't mess with
I
it?
haven't really tried. Excuse me, I'm coughing up a storm here. I really haven't tried to do it over media like this too much.
Okay. Yeah, because I wondered if the electronics would interfere, the lighting, or time, distance, space. I don't know. So
I don't imagine that it would, because like I've done one-on-one readings for people over Zoom or Skype or FaceTime and been able to tune in that way. So I think as long as there's an energetic connection, I don't think there would be too much interference. I know things are better in person.
Sure.
But I don't think it would stop it. What do you think, Greg?
I've been able to see one over electronic before, but again, I had to close my eyes. I didn't see it with my eyes. I had to close my eyes and kind of see with my third eye, so to speak.
Right.
I've been able to perceive, but it's only been once that I was able to do that with. And she was an intermediary, so her aura was pretty strong.
Right. One of the things I had done the last time for y'all, which you seemed to like, was I picked cards. I asked Spirit for a message that would be applicable to the group. And so I did that again before I signed on. And so would now be a good time for me to just share some of those messages that came through?
Please.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. So the first card I caught, the angel card, was the card of self-worth. And so I thought this was an interesting card because it talked about having confidence, expectations of success, having an ability to love. But it also said it's really important to have clear boundaries and to make sure that you didn't let people manipulate you or disrespect you. And so I thought this was an interesting card, especially this time of year when we are just running around like crazy, right? You know, there's the to-do list are off the charts, and we feel like there's so much we have to do for others. And this is also reminding us, hey, take the time to make sure you are paying attention to your needs, to getting yourself balanced. It doesn't help you to be PPP, past the point of productivity, and still pushing, right? It's like when you're totally maxed out, it's better for you to say, stop, let's take a breath, take a nap, take a bubble bath, get a massage, have a meal, go for a walk, do something that's totally recharging and joyful for you. And that will help to recharge you so that when you come back to whatever the work was, whatever the commitments were to other people, you're more refreshed and able to really attack it better. The next card I picked, I was like, what is this? And it's the wedding card. So I don't know who out there is planning a nice Christmas wedding or this small-time wedding. But the message of the card talks about the union of souls joined in love, mutual respect and commitment, and a desire to deepen love over time. And so to me, even though that the theme was the wedding, the message of that is very applicable for who we are right now as light beings who have come down and wanting to make a difference in the world and have a positive impact on other people and to shine our light and to share our gifts and to be that source of kindness and benevolence in the world. And so I was like, okay, I get that part. And then the third card I chose was contemplation. And this was reminding us again, in a way, to go inward and make sure you take time to reflect and ponder on all the situations in your life before you just jump into action and go through the same old. And then the 3 tarot cards I picked, past, present, future. So the past was death. It's the death of the old for the rebirth of the new. So this is a theme that a lot of people are going through right now. So whether it was the loss of a loved one, whether it's through death or divorce, whether it was loss of a job, loss of a home or items because of natural disasters, there's been this feeling of turmoil and everything being like upset. And now we have to kind of be reborn in a way and figure out, okay, where do we go from here? So this, now what? How do we make that next shift? And then I love this card, the Hangman. That's for now. And the Hangman says, you do you. Whatever floats your boat, that's what you do. Have your own style. Make sure you're tuned into what your needs are, because if your cup isn't full, you have nothing to offer anybody else. So it's okay. And not only okay, it's good to focus on you. And that's what makes life so interesting. We're all a little different. We all have our little quirks and idiosyncrasies, right? That's what makes life so rich. How boring would it be if we were all exactly the same, right? And then the last card for the future, I love this. It's the 4 of Swords. And this says, you have nothing to prove. You are worthy based on the birthright of being a son or daughter of the creator of this universe. You have nothing to prove. You are worthy of the quest that you have decided to take on with your own personal hero's journey as you go through your life. So stop putting up these walls and milestones and tests and things that you think you have to prove before you can get out there. You don't need to get 3 more letters after your name in order to be of service. If you know this much more than your neighbor, you can teach your neighbor this much, right? You don't need to have vast amounts of skill in order to help somebody. If you have the skill they need, right? They're going to find you. You just have to have the willingness to serve, to the joyfulness of living a purpose-driven life, and the joy that comes from knowing you're making a difference. You matter. You are touching lives and bringing a sense of clarity and guidance and joyfulness and healing and motivation and inspiration, maybe getting them interested so they'll be creative and take a chance and be curious and go try something new. And hey, what's that psychic tool you use there? What's that pendulum thing? Or, oh, you mean I can actually put my hands up and send energy and healing? Yeah. You don't need anything special. It's our birthright. It is one of the human potentials to have all these intuitive and spiritual abilities and skills. And the only thing holding most people back is no one gave them permission and said, here's how to start. Go play. You have a question, come back to me. We'll work on it, and let's go practice and develop those skills. There's nobody that's out there that is doing anything that only they can do. None. You may have somebody who's a prodigy who is born with a gift and didn't have to study or learn it, and we don't know how that happened. But for the most part, like, think of it as music. If you want to learn how to play an instrument, you can find a good teacher. You can muddle around with several instruments until you find the one that, really resonates with you. And then as you practice and learn, eventually you'll play beautiful music. At first, you'll muddle through the scales. It'll be like, oh God, will I ever get to anything besides this craziness, right? But eventually you make beautiful music and you can inspire other people. Well, the metaphysical tools are the same way. The first time you read a tarot spread and you're like, okay, you pick a card and then you turn the page in the book and you're like, well, it could mean any of these 18,000 things. What do you think? And eventually you get to the point you don't need the book anymore because you're so intimately knowledgeable with the cards from your experience that you just have to look at it, and what jumps out at you, that's what you share with the person in front of you as the message, right? And I think we shared this the last time too, and it's worth repeating. You want to make sure whenever you're on the receiving end of a message that it makes sense to you, to your mind, your intellect. We were given our intellect for a reason, that it feels right to your heart, because that is how we love. That is where we get our power in a lot of ways. And that's how we communicate with each other, from that heartfelt connection. And you also want to make sure it rings true in your gut. So there should be a coherence between your mind, your heart, and your gut with anything you're receiving. And in this case, 2 out of 3 is not good enough. So if somebody is telling you something and it doesn't make sense, that's fine. That person is just not quite on for you that day. So don't take it on and say, oh, well, they must know better than me because they've been in this field for buku years. Nope. Anybody can have a bad day. Anybody can misread at any moment. We're all filters. We're all human. Some of us are better than others at doing it. But you are the judge of, was this truly meant for me? So you want to make sure it rings true on all those 3 places, and then you can trust it and go with it, right? And same thing when you're even reading for yourself. It's like, okay, does it make sense? Nobody should tell. You can get something that's new. Like I might say something to somebody in a reading and they're like, oh, I hadn't really thought of that before, but it makes sense, right? They're like, no, that doesn't feel right, or it doesn't make sense. If that's the response, it's like, okay, hold on, let me look a little closer here, because it should all make sense. It should all ring true on those 3 levels if we're truly connected to a source of guidance for you. And that's what we as readers and channels and mediums are supposed to do. We're supposed to clear ourselves out as much as possible. We open up with a sense of love, and we channel and report through the messages that are coming that are specifically for you. So if they're not making sense to you and they're supposed to be for you, something's not kosher, right? So you want to kind of like time out, don't just take it on, right? I don't care how much money you paid for the reading or how, famous or esteemed the reader might be, right? You want to make sure you're getting what you need out of any kind of exchange like that. And even like in a broadcast, right? So you may notice I've shared certain things, and if you're like, wow, that's really interesting. Wow, that makes sense. Wow, that feels good. Yeah, I'd want to study with her. I'd want to have a session with her, right? That's cool. If for whatever reason you didn't, then I'm not a good match for you. I'm not a good fit and match for you. Don't try to put a round peg in a square hole, right? Too many people are like, oh my God, she's fabulous. Okay, great. Wonderful. But I'm not for everybody. I'm from New York. I'm direct. I'm going to give you the hug and kick you in the butt at the same time if that's what spirit tells me, right? I will, and they know that. That's my deal with them. Whatever comes through, I will share. I'll filter it in a way that's as polite as I can, especially coming from New York. I have to monitor my language at times. It's very. I live in the Midwest now. I'm in Wisconsin. Oh, my God, the first couple of years I was here, I offended so many people without intending to. I'm like, really? I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. Truly, it's just an adjective. You can have an effing beautiful day. It's like, it's not, I'm not trying to like upset you. It's just, it's just a word, But,
yes, it is.
But I've gotten to much more, oh gosh, and than I have any more the expletives that I used to have growing up. So I've evolved that way. It's mellowed me so.
Colorful metaphors.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. What questions do you have? I know we're coming up on the and there. Has anybody asked any questions in the chat that we need to know, or you all have anything you want me to tune into?
No, the chat's been kind of quiet. I think they'll probably start perking up now. They've been taking you in.
Yeah.
So
I love the opportunity to come on. Thank you so much for inviting me back. I just love sharing stories and teach. Well, you can see I love teaching. I get really animated and my energy just goes, because it's what I'm supposed to do. It brings me joy. I was tired when we started. Do I look tired now? Nope. I was ready for bed before I'm like, oh God, help me here. I could don't fall asleep in the chair. Right. And I was like, nope, I'll be up for a while now. That's that's the other clue. If somebody's the real deal out there, if somebody's a healer and they're exhausted after healing, or if they're a reader and after they read it for a person or two, they're like wiped out, they're not doing it right. They're using their own batteries. They're not tapped into the universal source. Because if you are channeling healing energy or information from spirit, you're going to get that contact high. You're going to have more energy after you've done the work than when you started, because it's all come through you. And it can't help but buzz you in the process or get you some going, right? At least that's my opinion. Have you found that yourselves doing the work, or when you're out there?
I think so. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. Well, one thing, we had a team member that we lost here recently, and we all he was a research team member, and we all thought a great deal of him. We all learned something from him. He was a mentor to so many people. How does it work once you transfer over? Can they still contact you? I know Greg's had an experience here, so I'm going to put you on a sidebar, Greg. But I mean, how does that work? I guess is my main question.
So the way that I understand it, especially the view of time is very different on that side of the veil than here, right? However, there is a process that still evolves for a soul once they cross over to the other side. So there's a time for healing, for integrating the learnings, for reconnecting with loved ones, and exploring all that is to explore back in that spiritual dimension, right? So when we kind of call out to reach out to them, I usually tell people you want to give it anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, depending, before you try to call them to say, hey, how you doing or whatnot. With a few exceptions, like I actually had a friend of mine whose dad committed suicide, and he came to me the next day and he said, can you please find out what the heck happened here? And so because there was such a great need, I think there's a certain amount of grace and spirit helps. And I was able to make a connection and get information for that man to bring some peace to the family. In the most time, if you call out for them, if they're available, their soul or an energy presence will come and will give you information. If they're busy, so to speak, so they're either in a healing mode, they're in a learning mode, they're out and about and they're not available, usually a guide of theirs or a representative of theirs will come and answer questions for you, for how they're doing or what's going on, so that you're not like left high and dry, like, what's going on, so there is a way to connect. I think more often, we can get a lot of the information just from their energy. So I'll often ask somebody, do you have a picture of the person, where I can see their eyes? Because the eyes are the window to the soul. And if you just look there, you can just get into this connect with their conscious field and get information from that as well. That's meaningful. And you can get things that can prove to the person that you're reading for that, yes, I'm actually in touch with Charles, and I have, this is what he said, or this is what the information was, or that sort of thing. So that's how I kind of perceive it. How about you, Greg, since you've done some medium work?
Well, on the medium side, this is the gentleman that Glenn was referring to. I had my first medium experience with him.
Oh, cool.
And you had said some things earlier that made me kind of think back to that. But we was having a guided meditation session. And during my session, I saw a few things, and I saw this white orb with a black dot in the middle. And it was very prominent. And later on, I saw Bob, the gentleman that he's referring to. And he didn't look like him at his older age. He looked different,
right?
But you knew it was him, right? So as I was telling the story, and I didn't know what the white orb with a black dot in the middle, I didn't know what it meant. And one of the other people that was with me, his name's Trey, he said, "Oh, I'll tell you what that means in a minute." And after I finished my story, and says, "Oh, I also saw Bob very clearly." And after I got finished telling my story, Trey come back and said that, it was Bob had seen a white orb with a black dot in the middle, and whether it was a UFO or an orb or I don't know, but it was a white with a black dot in the middle, and the black dot eventually expanded, and then the white orb was gone. Anyway, long story, I didn't know that story. Right. I didn't know it at all, and I felt very guilty and freaked out all at the same time because I didn't know Bob as well as everybody else there. And after that session, I was really disturbed, more so with guilt, because I thought everybody else deserved that message from Bob. So I went into, I left almost immediately afterwards. And as soon as I got in my Jeep, and I said out loud, I said, "Bob, why me?" And then just as clear as, all of us are talking, I heard, like in my head, he said, "It had to be you." And then Bob and I proceeded to argue. We got into an argument. I'm like, "What do you mean it had to be me? They knew you." Yeah. And he's like, "No, it had to be you." He said, "You didn't even know that story." And
right.
I'm like,
right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's confirming.
Yeah.
That's validating and confirming. Because if you had known the story, then it wouldn't have had as much impact.
Right.
But because you were not privy to it, that was, and especially since it was such a known story of other people of him, it was very confirming, like it's his calling card, right? So that was powerful. That's very powerful.
Yeah, it really was. But the strangest thing is, we had an argument there for a while, and I'm driving away, and we're still arguing, and I said, "Okay, well, why here? Why did you put your ashes here?" And he says, it's not so much this place. He says, you know, I could have been laid to rest anywhere. But he said it was the place where all the people he loved gathered in one spot and were there together. And
Nice.
and that's what he said, and why he wanted to be placed there instead of a cemetery or somewhere.
Yeah.
And as I got further away from the location, you know, it stopped, you know. But and I was riddled with guilt for quite a while over that.
Well, I would hope that, and when anybody receives a clear message like that, understand that you were the right vessel at that moment, right? So
looking back, I understand.
There's no judgment in spirit, right? And so they're basically gonna look to see what's the best way that this can come through. And so, you know, I would, instead of feeling guilty, I would feel honored, you know, like, oh,
well,
okay,
there was that too.
That.
I did feel very honored, and I do like to.
And the perception of him as a younger, more vital man, that's very normal, you know, for somebody who died either from an illness or a little older, that typically their spirit self is much more their like ideal, perfected vision of themselves, right? You know, so if somebody had lost the use of their legs and they were paralyzed, you know, when they died, they might be walking and dancing, you know, because they're restored to that fullness in the spirit on the other side there. So that's not too unusual. That shouldn't hang somebody else up. Like if grandpa shows up to you and he's, you know, young again in his mid-30s with, you know, full head of hair, and you know him, you know, in his 90s, you know, bald and you know, tiny, you know, and then meanwhile here's these like strapping young man. You're like, wow, grandpa, you're looking good, you know, but you're gonna recognize the energy, right? You're gonna know that vibration, that energy,
It was the vibration from it.
Yeah, you'll recognize that anywhere. It's almost like there's certain people, like, you know, their voice, you know, their laugh, you know, their smell, right? There's no matter, you know, you just know it. So you don't need to necessarily rely on what you're seeing to know, like, oh, that's them, you know, that's just so them, or their sense of humor. You know, oh my God, this one person I was reading, the husband had passed, and he came through with these one-liners that were like, I'm like, I can't see that. I like, wait a minute, you know. But I did, and both the wife and the daughter just started laughing and crying at the same time. And they're like, "Oh my God, Dad used to say that all the time," or that was like one of his catchphrases. And I was like, "Oh, thank God," you know. but that was, sometimes that's the calling card. That's the thing that helps them know, like, yep, you're in touch with that spirit, because of that colorful language or that turn of phrase that, you know, or that sense of humor that they had, you know. Like, I remember this one time, the husband was there, and he said he had sent the new boyfriend to the wife, and he said, "Oh yeah, I didn't want you to be alone, but trust me, he's not as good as I was. You know, I'm not that dumb. You know, I'll send you somebody that's good, but not as good as I was."
That's great.
And that was like the message. And she just started laughing. She's like, "Oh yeah, that's definitely Paul. That's definitely what he would say." You know? So you never know.
Yeah,
you never know. But I'm sorry for your loss, y'all. It's, you know, sounds like Bob was a really cool guy, and
he was.
It's hard. It's hard when you have somebody that's so key to a community, especially with the paranormal community, because everybody's like, "Oh, I want a message. I want a dream. I want to feel," you know, everybody's hoping, you know, so it's good that you do get messages to share, even if you don't feel like, well, why me? I didn't know him as well. Because you didn't, you can be that much clearer a channel. It's sort of like the reason it's hard to read for yourself. You can't be objective, right? Because you care too much. You're too subjective. We can be the best channel and get information and read for strangers than we can for our friends and family. Because first, they're going to think, well, you know me too well. How do I know this is coming from spirit and not just you? But when we're reading for strangers, and we're hitting on stuff that, yeah, that's validating what I was thinking, what I was feeling. That's what I needed to know. And I know nothing at all about them. then they say, oh, well, it must be coming from spirit because you have no idea of knowing any of this about me. It's much more powerful coming from somebody who's not as intimately involved or knowledgeable. So you were the best vehicle at that time just for that purpose.
He was.
Would be my guess.
He was. He was needed. So,
yeah.
Alethea, once again, we're out of time. I'm going to ask you again and again to come back. I won't make you come back next week. So
that's okay.
I'll let you have some time off, but I would like to have you because I have so many questions for you. And I'm sure everybody else does, but we're out of time. I'm up against a hard break with the FM commercial people.
Gotcha. So just send people to my website, AletheaJacob.com, and you notice that E in my first name, Alethea. The silent E is the only thing quiet about me. So there you go. He'll remember that. And then get my book out on Amazon. I have a couple out there. I have this one that's more recent. I have a life coaching one. They're both out there on there. One's $5, one's $10. You know, it's not going to break the bank. It's just fun little stuff for y'all. And thanks for having me on again. And if y'all know any other guests, any other hosts rather, that might want somebody crazy like me as their guest, please do spread the love and spread the word, because I love doing this, as you can tell. I love sharing my stories. I love answering questions. The hours just go flying by, man. That's crazy.
They do. I got a couple friends, so yeah, I'm gonna hook you up with them. So
cool.
We'll definitely do
Appreciate
that.
it.
Thank you for your time. Have a great night, and thanks for staying up late too, by the way. I appreciate it.
And nice to meet you, Greg. It'd be interested to be in touch too. All right. Bye, Amanda. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Love to everybody. Be kind. Be nice.
Thanks.
Always.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great show. They were fantastic.
She was great. She was great.
Both great guests were fantastic.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. I love
so
having
lucky to have the good ones.
We are. And we're lucky to have a guest co-host too. So
yeah.
Oh, well, how about that?
We might have to make a habit out of that too. So you don't have to do every Wednesday night, but every now and then you can fill it.
I like coming on. I mean, it's a lot of fun. You know, it's a lot of pressure doing some of the other ones. You know, as the guest, as a co-host, it's a lot more fun. You know, when I get to ask the questions.
Yes, I love it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but you know, with going on with our film, it just got finished yesterday. We're just kind of tweaking some things, and like this last little edit phase. But for the most part, it's done. And I'm developing a web page where we'll be able, if people don't come down to the premiere, they can rent it or either rent or buy it. But I'm going to do it so that's after the premiere date. You know, the people at the premiere will see it first. You know, it'll be a true premiere. So it'll probably be able to be viewed at like 5:00, January 4th. Something like that, but pretty soon I'm going to be launching my own page, and there'll be links to all of the films, and I would like to also put links to the affiliated podcasts. Like if I don't know how everything works, like if it's acceptable, I'd put a link to your podcast on my webpage, and people can come check you out. It's just another way of marketing for you, and my way of saying thanks.
Well, we appreciate
that would be great.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and we feel blessed just being, around you with, some of the things you bring to the table too. So don't sell yourself short. So,
yeah, I have been lucky. I will say that I have been very, very lucky. Even though I do agree with both guests. The first guest said he kind of made the the passing comment that, you know, these kind of things just follow some people, and I agree with that. I agree with you know, I think it's a vibrational thing that you know, the other things that's out there, the other entities or whatever, they're able to see you. You know, you're like a candle in the dark, you know. So you're like a light vibration. So I do agree with that, you know, and I just think that as I've started to do this, I've left my mind open, and as I've been able to perceive more, then my vibration, I think, is just raised more because I've left myself open for more and more and more, you know. So like I say, I have orb experiences all the time.
That's great.
Yeah. Oh, they are fantastic. So, but yeah, we're going to have to go out one day. Amanda, you're going to have to go with us, and definitely Cheyenne. She's going to have to go. I'm going to drag her out.
Yeah,
I want to. Sure.
We may have to go to West Virginia to get her, but yeah, she's got to go out with us though.
She's not too far from my house. Maybe like 3.5 hours. It's not too far from.
We need to make it happen, and then, you know, Erin's in Knoxville too, so we got to drag her out, and then we'll send Amanda out to pet the Squatch. I mean, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
or touch the orb.
Touch.
I don't know. I'd leave that one alone.
Well, this is what would happen when you see the orbs, right? When you go to try to approach an orb, it's going to move back. It's going to keep its relative distance from you. It's only going to approach you if it wants to approach you, right? However, there were 2 times I could have reached out and touched one, but they were moved very, very quickly, and they appeared and disappeared very quickly. Just whoop, whoop. But you know, orbs are fantastic. I love watching orbs. Absolutely love it. And I can't wait for the film to come out. And I know people like they hear me talk about all of this stuff, but I got them on film. Now there they are. That's what we see. You know,
I would probably try to pet a dog, man. Yeah.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
No.
You might come back with a nub.
Yeah. We'd have DNA though then. So
yeah, we would.
There would be a perk to it, I guess.
We would.
Oh, then I could have a hook.
Yeah, see, what's happened is her being an ex-wrestler, she put some kind of kick down on it or something. And
I
forgot she was an ex-wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah, she put that Tojo Yandamoto chop on them.
RJ, if you're still around, Brian, why haven't you not come on my show, by the way? RJ, if you're still around, there's the answer to your question. He has seen photos of orbs with faces and heads and beings in them. And Brian, you got to come on my show. Oop, wrong button. So, yeah, she would probably put a smackdown on one. So,
yeah.
But guys, I am going to bounce too. I've got to work early in the morning, so.
Me too.
I'm lucky I don't. So,
but next week, came on, Greg.
Yeah, I'm so glad you came on. Next week is going to be a very interesting show. I've kind of done it on purpose. We have an Australian who is a hypnotist. He's also an entertainer hypnotist. So I'm going to see if he can put Amanda in a trance or something.
Yeah, I'll do
it. I'm not. I will not. I'll look down. Whatever. I don't know. And in the second guest, well, we may break the internet. He's a country western singer. He is got his own band. He's an ex-veteran with his own story.
Nice.
And he's speaking out against the deep state. And he's got a great message. So I am really looking forward to that one. I've told him, I said, there's certain topics we can't discuss. Obviously, the jab will get us kicked off of YouTube. So we can't go there. But there are other places and other avenues we can go. So we had about an hour-long conversation on the phone. He's a great guy. I'm gonna actually try and get him to put his music on our radio station that I DJ for.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be cool. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting show because we're going to go from really funny to possibly really weird. So I'm trying something a little different next week. So
hey, you always got to keep it different. That makes what makes it interesting.
And I asked them both. I said, please make sure that you think of any paranormal stories. And they were both like, oh yeah, I got one for you. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
And then I think Shay is supposed to come out here on Sunday. So make sure you are following our Facebook page, the number 2, and it's 2 Broke Witches, because you never know when we'll go live or post something from the farm. So hopefully she'll make it out here on Sunday, and make sure you're following our Facebook page. And then we'll have a show Monday night.
That's right. Monday at 8:00, 2 Broke Witches.
Yep.
So, and Saturday we got the Misfits. I'm not sure what the hell we're talking about yet. I haven't figured it out. So. I'll make it up as I go along.
You need a wheel to spin with like different conversations on it. You just spin the wheel when the show starts, and that's what you talk about.
Of conversation.
Yes. We never stay on topic. Yeah, I can say we're going to talk about blah blah blah, and we never stay on topic.
See, that's what you need, Glenn, in the background is your wheel of conversation. You put all of these different topics on it, and then you just spin it, and then what it lands on, that's what you talk about.
Oh, once my chat grows big enough, we're going to try and bounce through the chat. That's a fun thing. Plus, we were enjoying. I'm not really sure how it played out on FM, but we were enjoying going and watching other people's live feeds and making fun of them while they were live. So probably not politically correct, but hey, we're misfits.
Oh well.
It is what it is.
Hence the name of your show.
That's right. All right. Well, Greg, you get you some rest. Amanda, you get you some beauty rest. You were glowing during the show, by the way.
She was extra beautiful tonight.
It perked.
Maybe it's my new light.
She's she's always pretty though. So
thank you.
It's my vibration.
I was as young as you.
That's got to be it. Man.
It's my vibration. I get the hot chicks. It's the only thing it is my vibration. Thanks to Ross at Yerg's Radio and Rainbow Radio. We appreciate you allowing us on the radio waves. And make sure to check me out tomorrow noon till 2 Eastern, spinning records on thethinlinerockstation.com. And until next week, guys and gals, have fun. We'll see you soon.
Bye.